Cool. So I think we have everybody. So how's everybody this afternoon? And welcome to the Up for Discussion Sunday podcast. It's a bit more laid back kind of deal. We just talk about stuff that happened this week, and more specifically this week we had a lot of IBC news, and Dan put out a tweet about multi-chain. So I thought it'd be really cool to have two people that are very knowledgeable about the topic. And that is John Chamberlain. He is a IBC engineer. He works on a lot of stuff. He puts out a lot of material. And of course, there's John Heeter, the not even jack of all trades, but he is just doing everything in EOS. You would just run into John everywhere you go on EOS. And Boy is one of the first tokens to take advantage of the IBC system. So very good to have you both on, John and John.
Hi, thanks for having us.
And with me also is Jimmy. Jimmy, of course, is not a what you call it? Is not a foreign face. He's been on quite a few times, and he's gonna help me ask some great questions because I don't know all that much about multi-chain and IBC. So, counting on you, Jimmy.
Yeah, well, I think we got a couple people here that we can learn a lot from. So I'm
Yeah,
excited about that for sure.
Yeah, so let's just get right into it. So this week, Dan Larimer put out a tweet talking about he's working on multi-chain. So what is the difference between multi-chain and IBC?
I think it's a term, really. There's many terms. You could say interchain, interblockchain communication, multi-chain. They're really just terms for interoperability between blockchains.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The terminology is pretty loose. People throw these terms around without really differentiating them very much. But I mean, I think we could try and differentiate the different terms here the way that we see things.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Interblockchain communication, multi-chain. Really, I mean, for multi-chain, I think it's nice to think of multi-chain dApps that are designed for multi-chain architecture, so that you can kind of think of the difference between a standalone dApp and a multi-chain dApp. I suppose relating that to network software and standalone software. So there's some similarities that could be drawn there. If you have a dApp and it can span across multiple chains, there'll be a huge benefit to that than app that is perhaps siloed to one chain.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I think in the beginning of EOS.io, when EOS first launched, right, in the white paper, there was this idea of multi-blockchain communication. I think that concept was originally one idea, and it kind of now have evolved into two different things, which is multi-chain, which is I don't even know how, like, it was supposed to be a scaling solution. Now it's not a scaling solution. I don't know what the deal is. And then there's IBC, which is, all of a sudden you have all these sister EOS chains like Telos, Wax, BOS. They're kind of run by different BPs, and we want to make sure that they are able to communicate with each other. So I think that kind of covers where that idea came from. Am I missing anything?
It's been around for a while. The concept of interblockchain communication. In terms of the white paper, yes, Dan Larimer was talking about it in the early days of EOS pre-launch of mainnet. BossCore, and I'm with the BossCore project. Boss was the first EOS.io based chain to launch IBC. And they did so in January 2019, and just recently have updated that or enabled the hub protocol, which takes it from linking the BOS chain and the EOS chain to enabling hub protocols, so that now link many EOS-IO chains all together, and relatively quickly through enabling that hub protocol, which was always there in the code. It just really needed a project to come along and require that functionality for us to actually enable it. And when John came to us, John from Boyd came, and we started discussing and bashing heads about how this would work for the Boyd application. It was just really a case of enabling that, turning it on, and connecting the chains. And I think we did that quite swiftly. And John's now working on the multi-DApp architecture, which will provide a framework for other DApps to be able to deploy across many chains. And there's various benefits to that, from leveraging communities to scalability, as you mentioned. So I think that the future is multi-chain, as Dan rightly highlighted. But also, in terms of Dan's tweet, as you mentioned, looking at private chains, there's great scope there. You just think what TCP/IP did for the internet, to really be able to imagine what this could do for blockchain.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, what's been interesting about this whole process is that you think it's very, very technical, and it is technical, but just as much as it is technical, it's also social. So we're talking about building technology for chains to talk to each other. Well, we spend just as much time talking to people on these different chains and explaining to them, how this is going to work and how we're doing this, and coordinating socially, because people have a lot of questions, right?
Are you referring to the block producers, or like, do they have to play a part in this, or are you just talking about the community as a whole?
Yeah, everyone. So we have block producers that are running nodes, and they're on the multi-sig for these relay contracts. And also, we have users in the ecosystem, the whole range of individuals, block explorers, wallets.
So actually, we were talking the other day, John, and I thought you said something a little bit interesting that might be good to kind of throw in here. But you were talking about, exactly what IBC is. Like, there's a lot of ideas that people have, maybe that this is IBC, but it's actually not. I mean, one example I think that you gave was the idea of oracles. Like, I think a lot of people associate Oracle protocols with IBC. And if I'm not mistaken, you said that an Oracle protocol is a little bit different from IBC, even though you have communications across various parts in the space. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I was just wondering if you might want to go into that, like,
Sure,
a little bit more, like,
Sure. So, I mean, think about, like, in mathematics, like you can say, like, 1 + 1 = 2. And if the other person understands what 1 is and what plus is, then they can deduce that it equals 2, and they agree with you. But you're not defining 1 + 1 is equal to 2. They could disagree with you or whatever. So an oracle or an oracle that most people know about, or an oracle that most people think about, is basically defining the truth. Like the statement 1 + 1 = 2, it defines the truth, and no one can contest that truth, because the oracle is like the origin of truth. So the difference here is that the boss IBC and any kind of light client based IBC, it doesn't define what is true, it proves what is true. So in addition to saying 1 + 1 = 2, it gives you an entire book, like on the basic theory behind mathematics, to define what numbers are along with that.
So as a very, very gross oversimplification, it would be like the difference between sitting down in front of your TV and watching a news broadcast about the information that's coming from the other side versus actually sitting down in a lab and figuring stuff out.
Yeah, exactly. So the basically these nodes are publishing on-chain proofs that something happened on the other chain. And then the contract itself can use those proofs to deduce if it's true or not.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. It was something that I never really thought about before. Because like you guys said, people throw these terms around a lot of times in the crypto space. People throw terms around that they don't even really have defined in their own heads. So I thought that was a really good distinction to make.
Yeah, it's very important to explain the difference because there's a massive difference.
Mm-hmm. So how is Boy currently utilizing IBC at the moment?
So at the moment the protocol just went live a few weeks ago, so we've kind of just been testing it out. The first kind of real usage of it was we did our distribution for folding at home contributors to our folding at home team. So basically about a month and a half ago, we announced that you could join the Boyd folding at home team and use your Telos username as your account. And we would distribute rewards to your Telos username. And people were like, "Well, how are you going to send Boyd to our Telos account? That doesn't make any sense." And we were just like, "Hang on a minute, we'll show you." So now that the IBC is live, we did a distribution to contributors, and the contributors were able to earn Telos, Boss, and Boyd to their Telos account. And so that was and about half of them so far, from what I could tell, have actually sent that Boyd they received back to EOS mainnet so they could stake it or do other things with it. So the technology works great. That was literally our first demonstration of it. So Boyd has like a highly specialized smart contract. Basically, we have staking and delegation, all this kind of functionality in the token contract. So that means like in order to activate those other things, we basically need like a wrapper contract on the other chains. So the wrapper contract, I just deployed a proof of concept of that yesterday, actually. So we're hoping to go live with that like in the next week or so. And then you'll have the same features on every chain that you have on EOS mainnet.
So you would be able to stake your Boy on Telos, on Wax, and on Boss Core.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, interesting. Is that a way to kind of branch the Boy community out to connect with these other, EOS IO assisted blockchain communities, or is it more? Does it help with scaling Boy at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is the number one let's say like there's a few different reasons for IBC. I would say the number one is scalability. So because resource costs are different on different chains. So obviously like making a Telos account and participating on Telos is going to be less expensive for most users and on Boss as well, right? So when new users register, we're going to encourage them to create a Boss account or create a Telos account instead of EOS. And because of IBC, the user experience for them on those chains is going to be nearly identical. The only difference would be like if they want to use some functionality which is only on mainnet, then they would need to pay a small fee to like send that to their EOS account. But most normal users, they probably wouldn't even need to worry about that.
Interesting. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
leveraging community is quite an important thing for dApp developers. Obviously, all
mhm.
about onboarding new users. Really, it's a great method doing that, and you get the added scalability.
Mm-hmm. And John C, in your work with I think I don't know from my perspective, it seems like you did a lot of the groundwork for implementing IBC as well. Which part is harder? Is it the communication with the community that's the hardest, or is it the actual technical implementation that is a little bit trickier?
The technical implementation is a lot of the back end work that goes on is quite intensive. The communication with the community, it's really a matter of keeping people updated as to what progress is, as to what's going on in the back end. So it's a combination of both of those things. The back end development work obviously is quite intensive, and the core developers' time is precious. So we create a buffer between the core developers and the community to be able to relay the information. So it works in very much the similar way to the IBC, how that uses relays to relay information between the chains. You could think of it like that in some respects.
Yeah. Well, John, so boys, communicating between all the different blockchains now, have you seen an uptick in community activity? Because from what I understand, like the Bose community kind of lean towards more Eastern, like the Eastern countries, or more specifically China. And it's for us, for me at least, I think I live in this kind of Western bubble on Twitter and on Telegram. So have you like kind of gotten more community members coming from the different blockchains into the Boy ecosystem?
There's certainly. Sorry, I was just going to say a lot of the articles that are going out go out in Chinese, and yeah, Boscore does have a very large Chinese community that receives this information, is learning about Boyd, and is following the progress of the IBC, sending transactions. It's interesting that as some of the developments take place, you also see other developments in the space happening. You might have seen the Binance smart chain that was announced a few weeks ago. It's based on similar sort of ideas and concepts, or interblockchain communication. This is the Cosmos projects out there, and various other interoperable projects, and we could see a time when these all start linking together nicely, and that really opens the doors for dApps that make those early inroads for multi-chain sort of architecture.
Yeah, things are still pretty early. I mean, we haven't enabled the ability to like log in and use Boyd from any of the supported chains yet, but we're hoping to have that, within the next month or so. All the functionality is finally there.
Cool. Yeah, I kind of want to shift the topic a little bit. So obviously another huge player they're always a huge player, but they're just kind of quietly on the back. So what do you guys make of what Block One is currently doing in terms of development? Like, have they kind of been positive towards, IBC? Obviously, they're working on multi-chain, which is kind of similar, but kind of not. Do you guys see that as kind of like I don't know, would it even be considered a competition or kind of a complementary component to what you guys are trying to do in terms of trying to connect all these different blockchains together?
I guess, like, for me, I think that it's going to be pretty simple. Like, whatever Block One comes out with is probably not going to be that dissimilar from what we have here with Boss IBC. That's kind of my prediction, and maybe it'll be kind of more widely supported or something like that. But I mean, if you look at, like, for example, the other technology that the community has come out with, often, like Block One, they come out with solid technology, but it's later than the community version, and the community version already has a user base. So if you look at their block, they made like a block explorer UI. They made like a authentication plugin for JavaScript for websites. And they also recently launched their own testnet, but all those things are not used as widely as the alternative community versions, which are often more feature complete.
Mhm. But I do feel like IBC might be a little bit different. Like you mentioned, Block One does have a tendency of coming out with their own solutions that does compete with the community solution. Shintai being, kind of the best example of
That's
that.
true.
Yeah. So I
I
think.
think the other thing you have to bear in mind with IBC,
Mhm,
if and we know that Block One is working on fast finality.
mhm,
Excuse me. And they can do that for private chains, but to have fast finality on a public chain that is 2 years in now, that to change the consent, it's quite a large overhaul.
mhm,
So
mhm.
would have to cross that bridge before getting to public
Actually getting.
IBC on EOS. But I think
Mhm,
that could happen. There could be a point where the finality, maybe even Boss 3-second lib, could port to EOS mainnet in the future. It could even upstream to EOS IO in the future, or Block One could develop their own finality. However that happens, let's see, we see fast finality on this network.
Can you
And
just kind of quickly explain what fast finality is for the people who are initiated like me?
right, well, there's this thing about block speeds, which is 0.5 seconds block times
Yeah.
in the SIO software, but there's also this last irreversible block,
Mhm,
which takes 3 minutes for a transactions to reach finality.
Yeah.
So that's when they're actually become immutable. One of the things that Bosscore did was to first leverage the EOSIO design to be able to deploy IBC. The
Mhm,
second thing they had to do before a transaction can actually cross chain, so to speak, it has to wait for finality. 3 minutes is a long time. When we first deployed this and we had the 3-minute LIB,
mhm,
people were saying it takes a long time. It takes like 6 minutes to go from Boss to EOS and back
mhm.
again. That's because of this 3-minute fast irreversible block. We were developing the second finality, and it's quite a lot of testing, a lot of work goes into actually developing that. And we developed something called batch PBFT, which changes the consensus for the underlying code, the Byzantine fault tolerance code, the way that works, so that it can achieve 3-second finality.
And
And
that's
that,
3-second finality across chain.
it does. Sending from Boss to EOS, for example, takes around about 10 seconds. Sending
Oh.
from EOS to Boss is around 10 minutes.
Mhm.
And it's because of that finality. And
But
there's
that, but
something
that's
that
but that's
it's
because
something
a change in the boss consensus
correct.
protocol.
So the first thing we did was to have IBC working. The second thing was to actually upgrade the consensus to make it a lot faster, so that we can realize this second finality that has many benefits for dApp developers to be able to reach consensus so that something's irreversible very quickly. That has wide-scaling impacts on many different use cases for consumer applications, for example. A payment scenario when you want to pay for something, getting 3 minutes or 3 seconds is a big difference.
Yeah, for sure.
3 minutes
and
and
that
3 seconds is still good compared to if you're paying with BTC.
exactly, yeah. And the thing is that what this shows is that EOSIO support fast consensus. So it's not a case that one has it, the others don't. It's a case that it's coming, right? And at some point, this whole IBC network will be lightning fast, and transactions will be moving around all these different chains at near instant speeds. That's something very, very good to look forward to. And, you know, we've seen this before with the internet as it's progressed.
Yeah,
You
exactly. I was
remember
just gonna say something.
waiting for your web page to load, you know, those sort of things that now don't seem to be a problem, you know, watching videos and movies over the internet. And so
Are you saying we gotta have video streaming services on the blockchain? I don't know. I'm not ready to go that far yet.
Well, it's funny because that's kind of what I was thinking earlier when you were talking. Is like the applications. I think for a lot of IBC probably haven't even been realized yet. I think once we go mainstream, there will be a lot of people. For example, I mean, like one of the biggest problems with EOS realistically is, you know, that you have to have that stake of CPU, especially, you know, to be able to use the network. And I mean, yes, we do have kind of, you know, backdoor solutions to be able to solve that issue, things like Rex and stuff like that. But I mean, even though it's becoming a lot easier to open an EOS account with various chains, it's still very problematic if you think about it, because like how many users are actually going to be able to, you know, number one, log in with their smartphone that know nothing about blockchain or cryptocurrency. I mean, most of them probably, you know, don't even do internet banking, you know, in a lot of places in the world. And then add on top of that, understanding the network and going about getting resources, going about paying for resources. So I think, you know, from my perspective, once things go mainstream, that ability to be able to use chains that, as John was saying earlier, aren't as costly. I mean, EOS isn't technically as costly as something like BTC or something like Ethereum with the transaction fee costs, but at the same time, I mean, it's still a lot more expensive than something like Wax or something like Bosco or Telos, and probably like the first thing that will go mainstream are these gaming types of, you know, dApps. And I mean, if you
Did Jimmy just cut out?
Yeah, I can't hear him.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think Jimmy was just saying that, you know, once IBC gets implemented fully, the user experience is probably going to be a lot more smooth, where you could transition from one blockchain to the next, while even realizing you made that transition. And, you know, our co-founder Paul pointed out Unify ID, which is our account solution that we are building out, that allows you to attach different EOS blockchain accounts onto one account cross-chain. Is going to be part of that, you know, future that we're building, which is again that the blockchain kind of fades into the background and the user will be able to get these experiences that feels like traditional internet, you know, web applications or whatever, but it is running on a blockchain. But it just feels just good, and you get the benefits of security, irreversibility, and ability to perform very, 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 very cheap and very fast transactions. So I think that's a very, very exciting future.
Indeed.
Hi guys, I'm back.
Welcome back.
Sorry about that.
Sorry, internet connection issue is always I wonder if blockchain could solve that. Is there a way to kind of use the blockchain to solve internet connectivity issues? Probably not, right? If I had to guess.
There's some projects for like mesh networking, you know, and like paying, you know, imagine if you paid like in microtransactions per megabyte or whatever in like a mesh network where everyone is sharing their internet connection with each other.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a few of those on Ethereum, and I don't think any of them took off. Maybe someone needs to try it again.
With EOS, because it's faster.
Right. Well, actually, I know that EOS Detroit has a mesh networking project that they're working on, because there's a lot of network infrastructure issues in Detroit, but I haven't heard any news from that for about 6 months.
I remember hearing from
that you might want to follow up with them.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Yeah, I always like one of the things that always came to my mind was like the mesh network model fits in a lot like the blockchain model, where it's peer to peer, but you're transmitting data, but you want to make sure that data hasn't been, tampered with in the middle. So blockchain just seemed like the perfect solution, but obviously that hasn't happened yet. So yeah, maybe ESD Troy is working something interesting. I can fix that. So yeah, multi-chain as well into blockchain communication. I think everyone kind of have a different idea of how like the future of EOS, and I'm not even sure if Block One kind of had that vision flushed out. So I do feel like at the moment the community kind of going in different directions and trying different things. Uh, that's great, but at the same time, I feel like that's kind of, I don't know. It feels like we're doing a lot of different things and they don't always connect with each other. Even with the case of the sister chains, right? Like they don't communicate with each other, which is kind of a problem.
They do now.
Yeah, they do that exactly. They do that.
And they are parallel chains. So I think that's a major step forward for the.
Sorry, John,
Yes.
cutting out for me.
I think it's a major step forward for the EOSIO communities because EOS, Telos, EOS, these communities come from EOS from before the mainnet launch. The most of the people, most of the block producers, most of the people in the community are in the EOSIO communities. It's not one chain. It's EOSIO is many parallel chains right now, and that's a good thing, And let's hope more come. There's more EOSIO chains in the EOSIO IBC network. One of the things we've done to kind of help this move forward is set up an IBC working group, and people can join that Telegram. Everyone's welcome. It's at IBC EOSIO, and you can jump in there and have a chat with any of the guys that are in there. Would be happy to answer questions and so on. We've got myself. I'm working on the operations. We've got Michael from EOS USA is working on the infrastructure, so he's looking after a lot of the relays and so on. And Don from Boyd is focusing on the app framework, so a framework for multi-chain applications. So if anyone's looking to have a token be interoperable around the EOSIO IBC network, in that group, there's forms and topics to all the details for adding tokens. If you want to discuss having a DApp be made multi-chain, then jump in that group, discuss it. And more things can start to happen.
Yeah, I
collaboration on these sort of things is the way forward.
Yeah, discussion is definitely looking to go multi-chain. First with the EOS IO sister chains, and then beyond, right? Like that's always been the vision. But I do wonder, with regards to the IBC and the relays, I think people might. Speaking as like a project founder as well, I think there's some hesitations to how secure the relay is. Like I understand that the BPs are some of the people signing the relay transactions. So obviously, if you trust the BPs on the mainnet, you probably trust them on the sister chains as well. Is that a concern that has been brought up in the developer group, or?
Yeah, that concern does come up from time to time. People question that, and I think a good example, without going into sort of BPs having the multi-sig signing for the smart contracts and so on, there's that can happen further down the line, and it becomes more decentralized. But a good example, I think, is what Boyd has just done with the smart contract for tokens. Whereas when a token travels across IBC, it's actually its native contract, its origin chain, which is probably created by developer, and that can be a custom contract as the Boyd contract for staking and governance and so on. When you send a token traveling over IBC, it comes out on another chain through a different contract. What John's developed is a smart contract that enables that token to enter that smart contract and come out as a native token on the second chain. So that's another example of how these security concerns can be addressed, because then that authority, the security, is back to the Boyd contract, taken away from the IBC contracts, back to the Boyd contract at that level. So, yeah, I think those concerns are good. It's good that people question them. Developers have gone through them and they understand those concerns, and the solutions are there for them. So,
yeah, I mean, I would say that the solution that I came up with is not, while it is nice, that the security of the contract is kind of moved away from the IBC contract. It's not really a solution to any kind of security concerns, because basically my token contract trusts that it's receiving real Boyd tokens from the IBC contract. If the IBC contract sends tokens, then it mints its own native token 1-to-1. So, if the IBC contract was compromised, then it would be, possibly minting tokens that don't actually exist on the other chain. So yeah, there's definitely a huge concern there. So I'd say the solutions are, the contract just needs to be like thoroughly audited and reviewed by more parties, which is they're in the process of, doing things like that. The kind of multi-sig on each IBC contract eventually needs to be given to the dynamic set of block producers. Right now we have like a smaller set of trusted block producers. I think it's like 4 or 5 on each chain, but I mean, that should be like the entire set of block producers. And then at that point, like, the security of the IBC contract is basically the security of the entire chain. So
the 2 chains, because you have the, what maybe not always overlapping BPs for those 2 chains.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, it's not like a combination of the 2 chains, but it's more of a weakest link, so the weakest chain in the IBC network, or like the lowest market cap or whatever, is the one that is the most risky. So that's, I mean, but maybe there's more, that we could do to kind of mitigate this kind of issues in the future. But I think like what's really important is that, like, anyone can run a relay node. You don't have to trust the other relay nodes. So assuming that the code does what it's supposed to do and doesn't have bugs in it, it's extremely reliable in terms of how it works.
So
yeah, and there, as John said, there is audits, code audits that can be carried out, and it's been in operation for a year, or over a year already, more than a year. So it's quite thoroughly tested. The hub protocol, which has just been enabled, even that has been, the code has been there for more than a year.
sorry?
The hub protocol.
Oh, the hub protocol.
Yeah, that's what enables tokens to travel, say, from Telos to EOS. And the hub provides the switching and relaying for those tokens, and the relays are in pairs, installed in pairs. And in terms of the smart contract multi-sig, it will go over to the EOS producers or the EOS.io producers on the various chains. It's just a case of still work being done. So to actually make that change now would mean it would slow the progress down, because there would have to be these sort of multi-sig approvals on every upgrade and so on. So until it reaches a point that it's that place where it can move to the SIO producers, which it could be soon. It could be before we know it, and we're already talking. It's already been discussed in that working group.
Yeah.
Not
to get off topic, but with the more and more exchange BPs climb up the ranks, I think that might be a little bit trickier than when we have majority of BPs that are very community focused. What we've seen from exchange BPs is that they don't do too much community outreach, so it's difficult to see that they'll be paying attention to things like these actively. At least that's my opinion.
Yeah, and it is a DApp in its own right in many respects, the IBC Light Client.
Yeah. So, John, I do want to ask you though. Now you have all Boy token on all these different blockchains. Do they have different weight? Are they treated as equals? Like, is there something that would make someone holding a Boy token on TLOS maybe less important than a Boy holder on the mainnet?
Well, there's no kind of extra inflation or anything, so there's always one Boyd token. Like any Boyd token on another chain is backed by a real original on the mainnet, essentially. So these are kind of, you could think of these as like cryptographically backed photocopies of the original token on mainnet that has like a secure code that tells you how to unlock the original or whatever. So they're not there. So I mean, there's no reason that they would have any different value. The only reason that you would want to have one on another chain would be like the availability of other dApps on that chain. So for example, Nudex has Boyd listed on EOS mainnet. So if you want to trade Boyd on Nudex, you wouldn't be able to do that on a different chain. But there's no reason that Nudex couldn't also list, the other versions of the Boyd token on different chains. It's just a matter of communication and everyone understanding how all this stuff works. Same with like the X Nation liquidity pool and things like that. Something that's kind of interesting is like X Nation is only deployed on EOS mainnet, but someone has listed the Boss token, the IBC Boss token, on the Bancor relay. Right, so you can trade Boss versus EOS on the EOS mainnet, using the Bancor relay, and then send, and that Boss is real Boss back from the Boss chain. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. I don't think the Boss people were thinking about that.
And the
no, we thought about it. Yeah.
Oh, really?
There's a lot of things. You look at the token pocket token, for example, that trades on. There's a Boss TPT pair, and there's an EOS TPT pair on Nudex. So that's another example of the cross-chain token, the IBC token, the PEG token on, because the TPT tokens are EOS token. So the cross-chain token on the Boss side is paired against Boss, much the same way as the Boss token on the EOS side is paired against ENT. Would it be, or is it paired on EOS through
it's a Bancor relay, so you can trade it for any other token on the platform.
Right.
Is the TPT token it's the IBC token, like on Nudex? Is that what they have listed?
Yeah, Boss TPT pair. Yeah. Not much activity on it, but it's there.
Sure.
So
Well, yeah.
Sometimes someone will go in and clear the order book.
Right. That's really interesting. And Telos has their own fork of Bancor called like Telos Swap. So there's no reason you couldn't list IBC tokens there as well. Yes, and that's just the beginning, really. I mean, there could be all kinds of interesting, use cases.
We had a project, or there is a project in the Boss UPS for a bank or project that was using one of those automatic sort of exchange features and had IBC incorporated in that project. It's actually based on what's the Ethereum one, the Bancor competitor on Ethereum.
Uniswap?
Uniswap, yeah, it's based more on the Uniswap design than the Bancor design. And they incorporated, there's talk of IBC in that project proposal, which was interesting to think that that sort of interoperability can be put in, because if you look at how the Bancor worked, and it went live on Ethereum originally, and
Mhm.
always had this sort of multi-chain interoperability in mind.
Yeah.
So and I think one of the things they used to say was that any chain that has smart contract functionality, they will consider deploying Bancor protocol on.
Mhm.
And when EOS launched, there was a deployment on EOS, and they created a bridge for Ethereum to EOS, I believe, as well, to be able to get that cross-chain
Mhm.
functionality in the wallet. So it's interesting to think, and even when you look at Nudex, the method that's used in Nudex is a form of IBC.
Mhm.
It might not be as
Decentralized.
same, yeah. It might not be as same as IBC, but it works in a similar fashion using
So it
called
sounds like
trees.
it sounds like one of the biggest use of IBC in the near future, at least, is for trading, is for the ability to kind of swap between tokens on different
I think
blockchains,
that's the
EOSIO
biggest
blockchains.
yeah, it's the biggest use case in crypto, in blockchain, right? Is the trading. So that's why you're seeing, I think it's interesting as we see more and more decentralized exchanges and how they work today compared to how they worked 3 or 4 years ago. And they were really pretty much unusable 3 or 4 years, but people tried, and today they're in many respects more usable than some of the centralized exchanges because there's less friction now.
You don't have to
Yeah,
KYC.
and I'm
The
not sure how much
liquidity thing.
I'm not sure how much of my tangent you guys heard before I get cut off, but that was kind of the question that was on the back of my mind as well. It's like, beyond exchanges, I was just curious what you guys feel like in the future the biggest DApp applications for this technology would be. Like, I was thinking like gaming potentially could be huge.
Gaming is another good example. When you going back 3 or 4 years ago, and talk of gaming coming onto blockchain was around, and there was a lot of excitement about it. And now it's like every other day there's a new game on blockchain, right? So, 3-second finality puts a lot on the table for the gaming industry as well, because they want things to be fast, and trading of in-game assets. And we come back to trading. Gaming and that tokenization. And when you look at how I think one of the things when we discuss with a gaming developer is how to make that open world for developers to start sharing code within games and so on. So yeah, social, Boyd is I see Boyd as social supercomputer. I think that's a great term for what Boyd's doing, even going back again 3 or 4 years ago when there was projects tokenizing peer-to-peer supercomputing. There were manual methods to do the calculations. There were dedicated chains, and now you look at the Boyd with all the smart contracts and that social interaction. It's come a long way. So that's a great use case, I think, and it's good to see that being applied with IBC in a multi-chain environment. So I think we'll start to see some decentralized finance across multiple chains.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a huge market. And then we can start thinking about different types of interoperability. How Oracle can start bringing in external data into multi-chain applications. And it's really open up then, because there'll be so much more use cases once that external data can come in and the infrastructure is in place to be able to handle the scalability across many different networks of blockchains.
Mm. Have the Wax guys? I mean, obviously, I know you guys do support Wax, but like, have they been actively in contact with you guys, trying to get the kind of IBC into a higher priority on their platform? Because Wax is kind of a completely different community, I think, even though they use the same technologies.
Some of the guys from Wax are in the IBC working group. It's, actually went quite smoothly, that, and what Wax does is quite interesting there with the games. I'm not that familiar with it myself, but the EOS.io change, so the technology is the same. That makes things a lot easier when you're working with the same technology. Things get a bit harder when we start looking at bringing Bitcoin and Ethereum into the EOS.io network. It can be done. We can do it today, but it's a lot more involved. But working with the same technology is a pleasure. It makes things work a lot smoother.
From a non-technical standpoint, I remember the days, when you used to be able to deposit, Ethereum. You can still do it, but you deposit Ethereum into a contract, and then the equivalent amount of tokens would be issued on EOS. I think it was BitPie who kind of started doing that first, maybe. But it's interesting. Like, my mind works in mysterious ways. Sometimes I don't even understand it, but just talking, the vision in my mind, I've got this weird vision that I can't get out of it. I feel like we're in like almost a science fiction world where, we've got these parallel universes that are all kind of connected together. And right now, you can take the wormhole, you can port from one universe into the other. That's kind of possible at this point. But to me, where I see, to me, where I see like where we need to go is to be able to, port yourself from one universe to another universe, but still be tethered back to the old one, and be able to run all of those applications and all of those contracts within, various ecosystems simultaneously. And as a non-technical person, that's just really exciting to think about it from that visual perspective,
I mean, I have a different perspective. I agree with you 100%. I'm just kind of frustrated that isn't already the case, because no other blockchain could, like, we have block producers, right? Like, that's kind of our key to this interoperability. And I don't think we have fully kind of pushed that potential to its maximum. Like, if all the BPs, like, kind of from all the different EOS.io blockchains came on board and say, okay, yeah, we're going to support this IBC solution, I think that would kind of really drive that movement and kind of that interoperability. And you would be able to use EOS.io like the internet. You don't have to kind of leave, the internet and go into the blockchain space. The blockchain space will be the internet. You want to play games? Okay, go on Wax. You want to trade assets on EOS? Okay, there you go. You want to use Karma on Telos? Okay, this. Oh, sorry, they're on Wax. Yeah, I mean, I feel like this should already be a thing. I don't know why it's taking us so long. So I'm sure like there's like technical and community issues at at play, but still, I just feel like it should be done yesterday.
Yep, that's how I've felt for a while. So yeah, we're finally pulling through.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
it's
good.
great.
It's good that it's happening. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great that we're making progress. And yeah, it's I want to thank you too for coming on. I want to thank you, John Chamberlain specifically for pulling a lot of the technical
Thanks for
weight
having
in
me.
the longest solution. And of course, there's John Heeter from Boy for kind of testing the water, the maverick that's jumping into all the bleeding edge technology and learning about them. I mean, following the Boy project, I learned so much about using Shintai, using all these different crazy projects that I would have not discovered. So I want to thank you too for coming on, and it was a lovely talk. And I wish to have you guys on again in the future.
Yeah. Thank you.
And
Absolutely.
Shane,